So let's talk about the beginner challenge we did yesterday. First of all, as usual, let's have a look to the to what everyone did, right? So first question, get the first name. So we have a user and we just have to return the first name. That's trivial, right? That's very easy. So in that respect, yeah, everyone did pretty much the same thing. I'm a bit concerned about what Mobin did. As you can see, I'll show you in a minute, right? So he's creating two arguments. He's declaring two arguments, the name and the first name. This second argument doesn't make any sense, right? So what's the value of the first name on this example? What's the value of this variable? Undefined, correct. There is nothing, right, in here, right? So this is unnecessary. Also, name, okay, name could be okay because actually we're just hosting the first name and last name. But as soon as we add a new property called age, email, gender, or whatever, the name may be a bit strange, right? So I prefer to call it user, person, player, something like that, right? Anyway, that was easy. Question number 2, make even. So we have a number. If it was even, we wanted to make it like, leave it like that. If it was odd, we wanted to make it even, right? Which pretty much was multiplying it by 2. So let's see what everyone did. So Michael, make even. So I think we got that function in place already, right? So we were expecting to invoke it. So we said, Michael said, if the number is not even, then multiply it. If not, just leave it like as it was, right? Yep, that's fine. Ben did literally the same thing. What else? Jin did the same thing. I mean, everyone has done the same thing, right? That's fine. That's absolutely fine. In the long term, what I will suggest you is, as far as possible, try to create positive assertions because they are easier to read. So instead of, I know that this code was already there, right? But if I'm reviewing this, I would say, look at the syntax here. We say, if it's not even, then convert it to even. Otherwise, if it's even, then leave it as it is. Do you think it's easier to say, if it's even, return it, else multiply by 2? It's a bit simpler, right? So try to, especially for these simple conditions, try to avoid this, to negate them because the code is harder to understand, right? Any question? No? Cool. So question number 3 was about sailing, right? So we receive a number and we want to obtain the closer integer above that floating number, right? 7.9, we got 8, 4.1. So obviously the round or the floor of 4.1 will be 4, but the sail will be 5, right? That was as simple as using the math.sail function, right? So I see pretty much everyone has done that. Which option do you prefer in terms of semantics? Michael's or Ben's ones? Or even Mobin's?
Ben's.
Ben's, agree. Because we're clearly specifying that we want to play with numbers. So here Michael said X. But what X means? Is it a number? Is it a string? Is it an object? It's a bit harder to read. It's not a big deal, but let's look after these details. For instance, Jin also used numbers, so that's good, right? Question number 4, I believe. Get remaining bank holidays. So we have, how many arguments do we receive here? 1, correct. What type of data is the argument? It's an array of what?
Object.
Correct. Okay, that's good, right? So at least we fully understood the data model we have to deal with, which is fundamental in order to solve the problem. So, okay, let's see how to calculate the number of bank holidays. The question was a bit more complicated than the others, I believe. So let's see if anyone struggled. Yeah, yes, no, pretty much no one. So then let's just review the solutions. So Michael, so he filtered the dates which each bank holiday property was set to truthy, and then he has returned the length. Easy, clean, right? So yeah, that's perfect. So then, so look at Ben. What happened with Ben here? Too long, exactly. He got a penalty, an unnecessary penalty. right? He was still using the arrow function, which is a good thing, but you can see how long this line is. He got an unnecessary penalty. Why he got a penalty? Because look, to me, even though Michael and Ben wrote the same code, Michael's solutions to me is much easier to read. I don't have to keep scrolling from left to right, right? And also, of course, the indentation is wrong. That return statement shouldn't be indented like that, because then it looks like it belongs to the previous line, but it doesn't, right? What else? We got Jim. So Jim's solution is pretty much the same as Michael's one, but you see indentation here is wrong. That should be clearly indented to the right. You can compare Michael with Jim, you see? So with Michael, we can clearly see the hierarchy. You can see that that return statement belongs to this block. And here, it's harder to determine that the filter belongs to this line. So please remember, every time you do have a dot, just indent it to the right, one tab. And then Mobin, yep, so that's interesting what Mobin did. So Mobin did something very similar, but slightly different. Instead of creating a variable, he's just inlining everything, right? So he's doing the same, it's literally the same code as Michael, using a classic function instead of an arrow function, but apart from that, he's doing the same. But then he's literally returning it and just calculating the length, right? Again, pros and cons of each approach. So this one is shorter, so you have to type a bit less, but it has two disadvantages. The first one is that may be a bit challenging to notice that we got the dot length at the end. It's a bit hidden. In this case, because we have explicit return statement at the end, right? It's more prominent, right? It's easier to see that we were trying to return the length of the array. And also the second advantage of this approach is in terms of debugging, this is easier to debug because we could add a breakpoint here and we could inspect the value of the holiday before returning it. Right? In this particular case, we cannot add any breakpoint because we literally have one line. Well, we could add a breakpoint here, but we cannot see if the value of holiday, if the value of the filter is correct or not. Right? Also, what do you think about a variable called holiday? It's not clear, right? How will you call it? Bank holiday. Bank holidays. Keep it in plural, right? Because holiday is still an array. So let's think about that. Let's try to use meaningful variable names. Any question? No? Cool. So then we got last question, actually. So Ben struggled with it, but he is not here, so let's review. Actually, let's do it, right? Let's do one question. So I'll jump to question number 5. Skip. So in here we had to get the keys of the object, right? So we have a random object with some key values in it, and we just want to return, sorry, not the keys, the values. Right? I said the keys, now we want to return the values, right? So we want to return an array with all the values, right? In the second example, it's interesting because one of the values is another array. Hey, but that's absolutely fine because no one said that we can't nest arrays. So in this example, we're returning an array that one of the elements of the array, index 2, is another array. That's absolutely fine, right? No problem at all. So, first of all, argument name, you tell me. Object or user. I don't know, user. I wouldn't call it a user. Is Sacharon coin a user of Codiri? I don't know. Data. It's a bit generic in my opinion, data. I mean, what do these guys have in common? Sorry? Actors. No, Mike Doohan is not an actor. I mean, you don't need to know that, right? So let's ignore the semantics of the profession of these guys. This is profile. Okay, we can call it profile. Why don't we call it person, right? Yeah, he's a racer. Anyway, the goal is not this is not about culture, right? This is about bringing good semantics. Anyway, don't call it definitely something like car, right? That doesn't make sense. But you can call it person, profile, artist, I don't know. But at least something that proves that you're trying to communicate, right? So unless you want to make it very generic, you can put object, right? Because imagine that in the future we have another object that talks about PC components, like CPU, memory, hard drive, right? Maybe we want to do something very generic, right? In that case, that may work. So again, there is no perfect answer to this question. My only concern is please think about the naming conventions. Sometimes we can clearly provide really good semantics. Sometimes, like this case, it's not that obvious, right? Cool. So how do we get the values of an object? Object.values. Correct. And what do we put in here? Object. Exactly. Right? So if we run the example, this works, right? How do we get the keys instead of the values? Object.keys. Exactly. Thank you, guys. Correct. Right? Cool. Oh, yeah, it fails because the question was to get the values, not the keys, right? Cool. Awesome. So, yeah, I think that was pretty much it regarding beginners. As I said before, the scores were pretty good. So, I think, yeah, we don't have to talk in depth about anything else in particular, unless you have any question. No? Cool. So, that's it for beginners. Thank you, guys.